for talking to the microphone.
Mine's getting close.
Phyllis Special is a poet, teacher, and coordinator for California Poets in the Schools and Poetry Out Loud, and the author of Valley Moon from Deep Breath and Doll Moon, and Doll Moon from Finishing Line Press. She edited and helped to author a highly regarded lesson plan, Poetry Crossing, published in the year of California Poets in the Schools 50th anniversary of 2014. So please help me welcome Phyllis and Zoe and Alex.
Thanks so much, everybody. It's great to be here. Jerry is my wonderful mic adjuster. He comes to a lot of events.
Does he know what he's doing over there?
No. So I'm here specifically today to talk about Poetry Out Loud. California Poets in the Schools is another hat I wear sometimes, but Poetry Out Loud is a program that was founded 10 years ago this year by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Poetry Foundation. And it didn't start out nationwide. It started out in Chicago and in Washington, D.C. It was a pilot program, and it is a competitive poetry recitation program. Who knows how far back it goes? And I gave these remarks, similar remarks a few years ago, so we'll see whose retention is good. And if you were paying attention then, you might know the answer to this question. Who knows how far back poetry recitation as a competitive sport goes? Anybody know?
1890.
Say what?
1890.
1890 is wrong.
Back to the Greeks.
No. Dewey, what did you say?
4,000 years.
That's about
Well, it goes back to the ancient Olympics. And I don't know exactly how many thousand years that is, but not only did athletes travel from all over the Greek islands to Olympia to compete, but so did poets and musicians. They were part of the program. So it's a long and venerated tradition. And in 2005, or 2006 anyway, when the program began, does anybody know who was the chair of the National Endowment for the Arts? Who was the person responsible for when this program started? Do you have a recollection of that? It was Dana Gioia, who has been on and off a Sonoma County resident. At the time when he was appointed, he was living in Sonoma County. He was part of the founding of the Sonoma Country Day School. And rumor has it, and I have no confirmation for this, but the headmaster of Sonoma Country Day School, Philip Nix, is rumored to have suggested this idea to Dana Gioia. It was a good program, and a lot of us grew up memorizing poetry. Poetry has not been, until maybe the last 15 years or so, a very strong force in this country. For quite a while it was, but it's kind of faded. And thanks to slams and spoken word and rap, which I do consider to be a kind of poetry, it's gotten a bit of a profile again. And so, anyway, Dana Gioia came up with this idea as a way of getting kids in high schools more engaged with poetry. I don't have the most recent numbers, but in 2010, there were about 350,000 students around the country. All 50 states, Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico participated in Poetry Out Loud. So, let's see. In 2007, or 2008, after 2006 in the Chicago and DC, it migrated to all the state capitals. And then in 2008, it was by invitation, or it was by request within the rest of the states. So if your community requested it, then you could get it in your county. They were not ready to fund it for beyond that. But we were very lucky in Sonoma County. At a little school known as Roseland University Prep, there was a very ambitious and and very hardworking student teacher who was trolling the internet for great opportunities for her students. And she found a website, a very wonderful website with all kinds of resources available on the website, and she said, I want to be a part of this. So she requested it. And thanks to her, it became available in all of Sonoma County. It wasn't available statewide at first. And her name was Deidre Harrison. And we're very grateful to her for having us gotten it here early. And in fact, Sonoma County has the largest, in terms of number of students participating, it has the largest program in all of California. And I imagine we're pretty high up there in the whole country. And it was very exciting that this year, for the first time in all these years of competitive recitations, a student from Roosevelt University Prep was the county-wide winner, and we have her with us here today. She is Alex Gonzalez. Raise your hand, Alex. So it's a great pleasure for her to be able to go to Sacramento and represent us in Sonoma County. And we also have with us Zoe Gilio, raise your hand, who's been the Amway champion for 2 years running, and I fully believe she hadn't been running a fever of 101 degrees at the time of our countywide competition that she would certainly be placed in the countywide competition. So let me just say, it's a spelling bee model, and I don't have plenty of time for the kids here, but it's a spelling bee model, so the classroom teacher says, all right, you guys, memorize a poem, we're going to have a classroom competition. And then they decide who's the best student in the class. And then all the teachers of the school are going to have a competition whose classes have participated among them. So the winner of the school-wide competition gets chosen, and then they all come to a countywide competition. And that countywide competition gives us somebody to send to Sacramento, in our case, in California. So this is what the rubric looks like that the judges have to deal with. You won't be able to read it at your seats, but you'll see that it's pretty complex. So they're judging on 6 categories, basically. And they have from 1 to 6 levels. And so they study this and try to understand how we're supposed to interpret it. Let's look at the one that says judge. So this is what the judge is actually looking at during the competition. They're actually supposed to be looking at the student during the competition to see how well are their gestures appropriate, or are they being too much of a pantomime of this red heart in the sky. They're having it up and not really embodying the poem as much, then they're supposed to judge down or things like that. So that's what the judges are looking at. It's not an easy job to do. And then we also have, I want to show that other picture, thank you. Somebody's there watching, reading along to make sure that the poem that the kid is saying is actually what was written by the poet, because if you sound really good, but you're not actually saying the words of the poet, then you should have a penalty for that, right? So there's an accuracy judge too, who just basically watches and deducts. If it's an A instead of a the, it's 1 point. If it's a stanza left out, it might be 5 to 8 points that you deducted. So that's how it works, basically. And now we're going to go ahead and hear some poetry by these exciting and dedicated students. I just want to say that this countywide competition was in February. Statewide competition was in March. These girls are committed to a whole bunch of other very important projects in their education, so they are not as strict up on their memorization perhaps at this point as they were at the time they were competing back in February and March. So they would, normally in the process, they would not have any notes at all. there would be a prompter sitting in the audience who would help them if they got totally stuck for a charge of 3 points for doing this. But they would also, they would just do it completely from memory. But since it's been a while, I've encouraged them to have copies with them, and if they want to glance at them, that they should go in and do that. And I think they'll tell you a little bit about how the poem, why they first chose this poem, how they came to understand it more deeply, and maybe what the program has meant to them. Oh, I just wanted to say one other thing. Dana Joya was at the Sacramento competition this year, and he said, and you know, why do we do all of this? For one thing, I think poetry is an underappreciated art. But when something big happens, like at 9/11, remember how the walls of New York, the fences and the walls of New York were plastered with poems. That's where people go when they need something small, concise, and that gets to the heart of things. It can bring you to tears or to laughter, or just a few words. So it's important for that respect. And then, as Dana Joya said, the person in front of the microphone has already got it made. That person can be an actor, can be a bank president. They have learned so much. So this is an incredibly valuable skill in all manner of walks of life. So that's another reason we do it. Okay, so Lisa's going to start us off here. Let's look at her other one. And she'll tell us a little bit. And then do 2 poems that she worked on. Zoe's from Annalee, by the way.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm from Annalee, just right down the street, so I'll be going to class after this. And I started to get involved in Poetry Out Loud last year throughout a rhetoric class. And ever since then, and hopefully for the next 2 years that I'll be in high school, I'll participate and hopefully try to win a few more competitions here and there. I really do like poetry, and like Phyllis said, everything that she said about rap and contemporary poetry, and even as it's dated back to ancient Olympic times, it's actually really impacted a lot of people and their lives and what they do. So with that, my first poem is Baudelaire by Delmore Shorts, and I picked this poem because it's dramatic, really dramatic, and I'd like to play that up a little bit. And I also just really like the story of it because it's this poet that's in a time of despair, and he's looking to his mother for support when he feels that he has nowhere else to turn. And it just kind of connects with me a little bit sometimes because in high school it's hard to keep up with work and it's hard to keep up with everybody else, and sometimes we have to kind of turn onto others for support. So I hope you enjoy it.
So I suggest you put the poem on the thing there so you can use your hands more.
Oh yeah.
So,
Here, do you want me to?
I just might want to use your hands so you could dance and go shop there. Okay, hold it. Is that
Yeah, I mean,
no? Okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
it's fine with that. Okay. Baudelaire by Delmore Shorts. When I fell asleep, and even during sleep, I hear quite distinctly voices speaking, whole phrases, commonplace and trivial, having no relation to my affairs. Dear mother, is any time left to us in which to be happy? My debts are immense. My bank account is subject to the court's judgment. I know nothing. I cannot know anything. I have lost the ability to make an effort. But now, as before, my love for you increases. You are always armed to stone me. Always. It is true. It dates from childhood. For the first time in my long life, I am almost happy. The book, almost finished. debts, and inquietude persist and weaken me. Satan glides before me, saying sweetly, rest for a day. You can rest and play today. Tonight, you will work. When night comes, my mind, terrified by the arrears, bored by sadness, paralyzed by impotence, promises tomorrow. I will tomorrow. When tomorrow comes, my mind, paralyzed by impotence, enacts itself with the same resolution, the same weakness. I am sick of this life of furnished rooms. I am sick of having colds and headaches. You know my strange life. Every day brings its quota of wrath. You little know a poet's life, dear mother. I must write poems, the most fatiguing of occupations. I am sad this morning. Do not reproach me. I write from a cafe near the post office, amid the click of billiard balls, the clatter of dishes, the pounding of my heart. I've been asked to write a history of caricature. I have been asked to write a history of sculpture. Shall I write the history of the caricatures of the sculptures of you in my heart? Although it costs you countless agony, although you may not believe it necessary and doubt that the sum is accurate, please send me money, enough for at least 3 weeks. That's the first time I've done that since February. So this next one is called For Love by Robert Greeley, and it's dedicated to Bobby. He had some interesting relationships throughout his life, but his main one was with his wife, Bobby. They seemed to kind of go on and off throughout their years of marriage, and this is kind of about his confusion and his love for her. And it stuck out to me because his confusion kind of goes along with the feeling of love when you kind of first feel it. And so I like it. It's cute and bubbly. So, For Love by Robert Greeley. Yesterday, I wanted to speak of it. That sense above the others, to me important, because all that I know derives from what it teaches me. Today, what is it that is finally so helpless, wants to turn away, endlessly to turn away? If the moon did not, no, if you did not, I wouldn't either. But what would I not do? What thing, what prevention would so quickly stop? That is love yesterday, or tomorrow, not now. Can I eat what you give me? I have not earned it. Must I think of everything as earned? Now, love becomes reward so remote to me, I have only made it with my mind. Here is tedium, despair, a painful sense of isolation, and whimsical, if pompous self-regard. But that image is only of the mind's vague structure, vague to me because it is my own. Love, what do I think to say? I cannot say it. What have you become to ask? What have I made you into? Companion, good company, cross legs with skirt, or soft body under the bones of the bed. Nothing says anything but that which it wishes would come true. Fears what else might happen in some other place, some other time, not this one. A voice in my place, an echo of that only in yours. Let me stumble into not the confession, but the obsession I begin with now for you. a place beyond time, and no mind left to say anything at all. That face, gone now, into the company of love it all returns.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Gonzalez and I'm a student at Roseland University Prep, and I will be reciting The Layers by Stanley Kunitz. I believe this poem is about coming of age, the hardship in life, and the transformations that goes on in ourselves and how we change. Here we go. The Layers by Stanley Kunitz. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was. Though some principle of being abides, from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to look before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling toward the horizon, and the slow fires trailing from the abandoned campsites, over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have named myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How should the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage, a nimbus-clouded voice directed me. Live in the layers, not on the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes.
That's it. Pretty much used up all our time. We have time for one question. This one?
Billy has one.
Dewey.
Yeah, I've got, this is actually a story very appropriate to these. When I was their age, I competed at statewide competitions and speeches. The point of the story was that it was a winter circle, and I don't remember my category, probably oratory or something, but there was this sort of nondescript, short lady next to me who won the poetry division for the statewide competition. And I remember her, didn't think much of, who's this? And it was only years later when after my mother died, I had all these newspaper clippings and stuff, and I completely forgot about the contest and look at the picture and I say, boy, she looks familiar. Oh, Bette Midler. So you do have another field to go to other than just a reciting poet.
Thanks so much for having us, everyone.
Thank you for listening. I'm a little bottled that, and it's very nice to else, but it also goes to the contribution. And I have one other little task for you. And for those, there's a rumor going around that I'm not playing with a fullback. And It goes in the pot. There's not that much money this time, but somebody can win that. If you draw a card, and read the last number.
2249.
Going once, going twice. Oh, is that you?
No, I have it here.
Do
It's
again.
over here.
Draw again.
Draw again. Draw again.
Must be present again.
2218.
Try again.
All right.
No, draw again.
Third one usually is the charm.
2255.
Again.
Somebody bought it.
So one of these, as you know from last week, is a case.
So don't you think for those that don't bring in their gifts, like somebody that's been in the club forever, it should be double or nothing the next one?
I think so. That makes sense.
Thanks, Nancy.
Yeah,
He was here last time.
yeah. But not this time.
I would love it, man.
Well, that's appropriate. Thank you for playing. So we don't have the,
So this must be free, right?
yeah,
Okay.
It's you, Nancy.
okay. Wayne Britton, you have a joke for us. All you need is a microphone.
No, 18.
Okay, I didn't get one this week. So this is from Garrison Keeler, so it might be a little tame for this group, I'm not sure. We'll see. A priest and an atheist were arguing over, some of the questions of life, those important questions. Neither of them seemed to be getting the upper hand, and finally the priest said, "Stop. Listen to this and learn from this. You know that rabbits, their droppings, are little round, perfectly shaped balls. And deer have the same thing, except they're a little bit bigger. And cows, splat, they have these big old cow pies. And the atheist looked at the priest and he said, "So what does that mean?" The priest says, "You don't know shit."